James Clapper, a career intelligence officer, was the director of national intelligence for more than 6 years under President Obama. He spearheaded the report that was released in January that concluded that the Russians hacked the Democratic National Committee emails and interfered with the 2016 election. And Mr. Clapper joins me now. Welcome, sir, to Meet the Press.
Thanks, Chuck, for having me.
Let me start with the president's tweets yesterday. This idea that maybe President Obama ordered an illegal wiretap of his offices. If something like that happened, would this be something you would be aware of?
I would certainly hope so. I can say, obviously I can't speak officially anymore, but I will say that for the part of the national security apparatus that I oversaw as DNI, there was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign. I can't speak for other Title III authorized entities in the government, or a state or local entity.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if the FBI, for instance, had a FISA court order of some sort for a surveillance, would that be information you would know or not know?
Yes.
You would be told this?
I would know that.
If there was a FISA court order
Yes.
on something like this?
Something like this, absolutely.
And at this point, you can't confirm or deny whether that exists?
I can deny it.
There is no FISA court order?
Not to my knowledge.
Of anything at Trump Tower?
No.
Well, that's an important revelation at this point. Let me ask you this. Does intelligence exist that can definitively answer the following question, whether there were improper contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian officials?
We did not include any evidence in our report, and I say our, that's NSA, FBI, and CIA with my office, the Director of National Intelligence, that had any reflection of collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russians. There was no evidence of that included in our report.
I understand that, but does it exist?
Not to my knowledge.
If it existed, it would have been in this report.
This could have unfolded or become available in the time since I left the government. At the time, we had no evidence of such collusion.
There's a lot of smoke, but there hasn't been that smoking gun yet. At what point should the public start to wonder this is all just smoke?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I do think, though, it is in everyone's interest, in the current president's interest, in the Democrats' interest, in the Republican interest, in the country's interest, to get to the bottom of all this, because it's such a distraction. And certainly the Russians have to be chortling about the success of their efforts to sow dissension in this country.
So you feel like your report does not get to the bottom? You admit your report that you released in January doesn't get to the bottom of this?
It did. Well, it got to the bottom of the evidence, to the extent that of the evidence we had at the time. Whether there is more evidence that's become available since then, whether ongoing investigations will be revelatory, I don't know.
There was a conclusion that said it's clear that the Russians interfered and did so in an attempt to help Donald Trump. Do you still believe that conclusion?
Yes, I do.
But at this point, what's not proven is the idea of collusion.
That's correct.
When you see these parade of officials that were associated with the Trump campaign, first they deny any conversations, now we're hearing more, does that add to suspicion, or do you think some of this is circumstantial?
Well, I can't say what the nature of those conversations and dialogues were, for the most part. Again, I think it would be very healthy to completely clear the air on this subject, and I think it would be in everyone's interest to have that done.
Can the Senate Intelligence Committee, what are we going to learn from their investigation, do you think, that will move beyond what you were able to do?
Well, I think they can look at this from a broader context than we could. And at this point, I do have confidence in the Senate Intelligence Committee and their effort. It is underway. In contrast to the House Intelligence Committee, which just last week agreed on their charter. And importantly, in the case of the Senate Intelligence Committee, this appears to me to be a truly bipartisan effort. And so I think that needs to play out. If for some reason that proves not to be satisfactory in the minds of those who make those decisions, then perhaps move on to a special prosecutor.
The New York Times earlier this week, and as I was introducing you, this idea that they sort of left a trail, maybe lowered classification. Can you walk us through how that would work? Did they lower classification levels on certain information? What is that was that a fair read of what was done in the last few weeks of the administration?
Actually not. Because of the sensitivity of much of the information in this report, our actual effort was to protect it and not to spread it around, and certainly not to dumb it down, if I can use that phrase, in order to disseminate it more widely. We were under a preservation order from both our oversight committees to preserve and protect all the information related to that report in any event.
Let me ask you one other final question on the infamous dossier that was put together by this former British operative named Christopher Steele. Why did you feel the need to brief the president on that at the time?
We felt that it was important that he know about it, that it was out there, and that, without respect to the veracity of the contents of the dossier, that's why it was not included as a part of our report, because much of it could not be corroborated. And importantly, some of the sources that Mr. Steele drew on, second and third order assets, we could not validate or corroborate. So for that reason, at least in my view, the important thing was to warn the president that this thing was out there. The Russians have a term, an acronym called compromat, which they will either generate, either if it's truthful or if it's contrived. And it's important, we felt, that he knew of the existence of this dossier.
Have you done this with other presidents? Have you had to brief them about unverified intelligence?
Yes, I've had occasion in the 6.5 years I was DNI to tell President Obama certain things that we could not corroborate or validate, but that we just thought he ought to know it was out there.